Church. It's Pastor Matthew here for our Children's Praise lesson. We're working through our catechism. We're learning a lot of good, big, fancy words. A lot of these words you might have only heard for the first time. So I'm really happy to be able to start talking about these things with you. And I know your teachers are doing an amazing job explaining these big pictures in really, really small little images, so they make a lot of sense. Now, if you've been with us, you should remember, what have we been talking about a lot lately? Even if you want to pause the video, maybe that's a good question to say, what have we been talking about a lot? Do you know? So we've been talking about the word sin. Sin and the problem of sin in our life. And there's lots of different ways it's a problem in our life. But here we have in the Catechism, question 20, another aspect of sin that we've been talking about, which is misery. Sin is misery, or just makes you really, really sad, right? Now the question goes further to ask this. Did God leave all mankind to die in sin and misery? So did God leave us to die in sin and misery? Here's the answer. From all eternity, and merely because it pleased him, God chose some to have everlasting life. These he freed from sin and misery by a covenant of grace, and brought them to salvation by a Redeemer. Now these are some important words. The words I want to focus on here are covenant of grace and salvation by a Redeemer. So let's think about that for a second. We know what a covenant is. We've talked about a covenant before. A covenant is nothing more than a promise, a really important promise. So a covenant of grace is a promise for a gift. Now what is that gift? Because grace is a gift. We know what a gift is. We've talked about it before in Christmas. And you know what a gift is when someone gives you something you didn't expect and they just give you a great gift. Well, this gift, it says in the question, is salvation by a Redeemer. So what is salvation and what is a Redeemer? So here's a simple image to think about what salvation is by a Redeemer, right? So this is an image of a life preserver, right? If you've ever been to a swimming pool, you'll see on the sides of the swimming pool, or if there's a lifeguard, we call them lifeguards, because they have these life preservers and they throw them out into the water and it floats on the water. And if anyone's drowning or they're having a hard time swimming, they grab onto it and it holds their life up out of the water. So it preserves their life, or it saves their life. That's why the people that use these are called lifeguards, right? So this is a life preserver. So I want you to see this image of a man holding his hand out in the water, right? And what you find there is this life preserver being thrown over there so that he can be pulled out from drowning, so that he doesn't die. That's called being a lifeguard. That's what Jesus is, you see. Jesus is like a lifeguard, and he throws out his life for us, and he preserves our life by giving us a place to be safe, that is, with him, right? And so the next image you'll see is how it works. You see a man sitting inside that life preserver, and now he's above the water and his life is saved because he's inside the life preserver, like this. So the way to be saved is to be inside Jesus. He surrounds your life and keeps you afloat so that you are alive with him. Here's the Bible verse for how that makes sense. Ephesians 2 says it that way. It says in Ephesians 2:8, for by grace, which is a gift, which is God giving himself to save us, Jesus, for by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not your own doing, it is a gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. So now you understand the answer to the question is God does not leave us in sin and misery or sin and sadness, but he actually gave us a life preserver in Jesus so that by grace we will be saved And this is not our works, but it is by faith. Trusting in Jesus puts you in the center of this life preserver, in the center of Jesus, and he keeps you afloat and makes you alive. So that's how God has saved us. That's how the Catechism answers that question, and we'll look further to understand what that really means.